I, Dr. Rita Pratap, former head of the Department, Drawing and Painting, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. I am going to speak on the history of Japanese art. Module 31, Osaka and Nagasaki artists. Osaka and Nagasaki were the nation's most important artistic centers after Kyoto and Edo. Both were major ports, with Osaka dominating domestic and Nagasaki foreign shipping, and were under the direct administrative supervision of the shogunate. The beginnings of Osaka's cultural flowering can be traced to the construction of its lavish castle in 1583. One of the most ambitious and lavish architectural projects undertaken by Hideyoshi, the materialistic orientation of Osaka culture served as a bridge between the cultures of Kyoto and of Edo. Osaka's first cultural autonomy was achieved during the Genroku era. The Kano school provided the educational matrix for many Osaka painters. Mori Jusan was the founder of the Osaka branch of the Maruyama Shijo school. The subject matter of the Osaka prints was drawn primarily from Kabuki theatre. Osaka and Nagasaki were the nation's most important artistic centers after Kyoto and Edo. Both were major ports, with Osaka dominating domestic and Nagasaki foreign shipping, and both were under the direct administrative supervision of the shogunate. Their cultural influence derived not from the size, however, but rather from the location and from the social and ethnic composition of their populations. Osaka was normally a castle city, but because its castle was not the residence of a feudal lord, the warrior population remained relatively small and was vastly outnumbered by townsmen engaged in commerce, banking, and crafts. The latter were not of the luxurious variety produced in Kyoto, but considered predominantly of practical articles such as cooking pots, rice bowls, and chopsticks for the urban consumer. The preponderance of chonin in Osaka fostered the growth of a culture with a distinctly mercantile character. In Nagasaki, by contrast, the presence of Dutch and Chinese traders, though numerically small, made the city a mecca for inquisitive and innovative artists from all over the country. Until the opening of the port of Yokohama in 1859, Nagasaki was Japan's window on the world. An example by anonymous painter is the bird's eye view of the port of Nagasaki. It is a woodblock print and at present in the British Museum, London. This small island in the foreground of this souvenir print is fan-shaped Deshima, where after 1641 Dutch traders were confined. In the harbor beyond are Chinese and Dutch ships. Osaka lies in a fertile and prosperous region, and because of its advantageous location at the head of Osaka Bay and at the mouth of the Yodo River, it became the hub for the collection and distribution of the rice tax from domains in Western Japan. It also led the nation in manufacturing industries such as shipbuilding, oil production, copper refining, and cotton processing. As Osaka prospered, its dynamic community of merchants, bankers, and manufacturers began to support cultural activities of all kinds. Proximity to Kyoto fostered close ties among artists of the two major cities in the Kamigata. But Kyoto culture, as recreated by and for free spending, Osaka townsmen was less concerned with aristocratic refinement than with material splendor. The materialistic orientation of Osaka culture served as a bridge between the cultures of Kyoto and Edo. Engelbert Kaempfer, 1651 to 1716. A German physician serving the Dutch East India Company was afforded the rare opportunity of visiting Osaka in 1691 and 1692 during one of the journeys to Edo made by the company's director to offer presents to the shogun. In the history of Japan, Kaempfer noted that the city, well inhabited with rich merchants, artificers, and manufacturers, had a reputation for free spending. The beginning of Osaka's cultural flowering can be traced to the construction of its lavish castle in 1583. One of the most ambitious and lavish architectural projects undertaken by Hideyoshi. Its outer courtyard was 8 miles, that is 13 kilometers, in circumference, requiring tens of thousands of workmen for its construction. Its interior decor, painted by Kano Itoku and his workshop, was equally impressive. The castle was badly damaged during the siege and battle of Osaka in 1614 and 15 that wiped out all the heirs to the Toyotomi family. After assuming control of the city in 1615, the shogunal government repaired the castle and undertook massive public works projects that transformed Osaka into a city of canals and bridges. As in Edo, activities were strictly controlled by the government. Osaka first achieved cultural autonomy during the Genroku era, that is 1688 to 1704, a golden age throughout the Kansai region. The racy fiction of the Osaka writers Asai Ryoe, dated 1691, and Ihara Shaikaku, 1642-93, popularized the word yuki-e in its new and fashionable hedonistic sense of living for the moment. Osaka's cultural identity was further defined by the playwright Chikamatsu Moonjoemon, 1653-1725. Although he wrote primarily for the puppet theatre, which was the rage in 17th century Osaka, many of his domestic tragedies built around unsuitable love affairs and culminating in double suicides were subsequently adapted for the kabuki stage. The emotional orientation of these dramas fostered the development of wagato, or soft style of acting, for which Osaka was renowned. Kimura Ken Kado and his circle. The Ki-Oho era reforms curbed the unstrained pursuit of pleasure and brazen display of merchant wealth that the shogunal authorities deemed injurious to public morals and threatening to the stability of the city. The desire to promote a more intellectual ambience in Osaka also led to the founding in 1724 of the Kai Tokudo, a school of Chinese studies for commoners, comparable to the Shohikyo, the government-run Confucian Academy in Edo. With the institution of Kai Tokudo, both formal and informal cultural clubs sprang up, comparable to those in Kyoto and Edo, where cultivated men could gather to compose poetry, paint, and enjoy related activities associated with the life of the Chinese literatus. The same merchant, Kimura Kankado, one of Osaka's most enlightened personalities, Kankoda's reputation as a man of wide-ranging intellectual curiosity, learning, and artistic talent, not to mention as a generous host, made his residence a magnet for artists and scholars from as far away as Edo and Nagasaki. Shiba Koken, 1747 to 1818, a pioneer in European oil painting and copper plate engraving, visited him both on his way to and on his return from Nagasaki in 1788-89. Tani Buncho, 1763-1840, also visited Kankado in 1796, and on this occasion made preliminary sketches for the commemorative portrait he painted after Kankado's death. The portrait of Kimura Kankado. It is a hanging scroll, ink and colors on paper, and in the collection of Osaka Prefecture Board of Education. Though fairly conventionalized, this painting was based on sketches Bunsho made during his visit to Kankado's residence in 1796. Kankado's diary and other writings reveal Osaka to have been a close-knit yet cosmopolitan city whose leading artists were unusually receptive to a new artist trend. The Kano school provided the educational matrix for many Osaka painters, such as Oka Shunboku, 1680 to 1763, under whom Kankado himself studied for a time. However, exponents of the Maruyama Shijo and literary styles enjoyed the greatest favor among local patrons, while there was no doubt some professional rivalry between them. Members of both schools frequented Kankado's saloon. Kankado had a special predilection for literary painting and maintained close ties with many of its leading exponents. He studied informally with both Yanagisawa Kane and Ike Tagia, and was so impressed with the latter's talent that he helped to promote his work through exhibitions in Osaka and Kyoto. He also received instruction from the Obaku priest Kakuke and from the Nagasaki painter Kumashiro Yuhi, 1713 to 1772. For Kankado himself, however, painting remained an avocation, not a profession, even after the loss of his brewing business in 1789, when he was accused by the authorities of illegally producing excessive quantities of sake. Although many literary painters passed through Osaka, Okada Baisenjin, 1744 to 1820, seems to have been the first major exponent of the literary style native to the city. A local rice merchant, B. Sanjin, was apparently self-taught, although some of his work reveals the influence of Taiga, with whose painting he may have become acquainted through Kankado. Like most literati, he had a penchant for idealistic landscapes and gardens with Chinese literary associations. often representing them with a quirky and humorous touch. Okada Baisenjin hanging scroll, ink and light colors on paper, and in the Edimistu Museum, Tokyo. In the version reproduced here, the small figures seated along the banks of the winding stream that extends the length of the composition are dwarfed by fantastic pretzel-shaped rocks. Bensojin's fascination with grotesquely perforated rockery, a key component in Chinese garden design, may have come about from his study of books or even actual rocks in Ken Cardo's celebrated collection of curiosities. After Ken Cardo's death, Osaka lost something of its cultural prominence among literary artists, and B. Sanjani's son, Hanku, 1782 to 1846, also an accomplished painter, gravitated to the Kyoto circle of Rai Saino. Like other literary artists of his generation, he became familiar with Chinese literary theory and practice and adhered more closely to Chinese models and brush techniques. Mori Sosen, 1747-1813, the founder of the Osaka branch of the Maruyama Shijo School, was another local artist who visited Ken Cardo's residence. Like Okyo, Sosen claimed to take nature as his model, gaining a reputation as a painter of monkeys, which he said to have studied in their natural habitat so as to represent them accurately. Monkeys in Snow is a good example. It is a hanging scroll, ink and colors on silk, and at present in the Itsu Art Museum, Osaka. The Osaka workshop, founded by Sosen, continued to flourish after his death, producing increasingly stereotyped paintings of monkeys and other flora and fauna rendered in a realistic manner against a decorative background. Osaka Books and Prints. All the publishing enterprises flourished in Kyoto, Nagoya, and Nagasaki. Osaka was the only city that came close to rivaling Edo in quality, if not in quantity or variety of its books and woodblock prints. Illustrated books produced in Osaka catered to the practical requirements and cultural interests of residents throughout Western Japan. They included treatises on agriculture and sericulture, poetry collections, travel guides, guides to Shinmachi, Osaka brothel district, and compendia of famous Chinese and Japanese painting. Fueled by the burgeoning interest in natural history, artists of all affiliations published picture books of flowers, birds, and other creatures rendered with meticulous attention to textures, colors, and patterns of foliage, fur, and weather. The painting manual by Mori Sosen's pupil, Shunke Mori, flourished 1820, is an illustration from Shunke's painting compendium. It is a woodblock printed book dated 1820 and it is in Rabbit's collection Santa Monica. Shunke's close-up views of insects on a decaying lotus may have been inspired by a design by Utamaro, but its more realistic approach reflects the influence of the Nagasaki school. The illustration here exemplifies both the high technical quality and the artistic aestheticism characteristic of 19th century Osaka publications. The subject matter of Osaka prints was drawn primarily from the Kabuki theatre, in which local residents took great pride. The four main theatres, located in a narrow street parallel to the south bank of Dotonbori Canal, attracted a large and affluent clientele, which in turn brought actors from Edo to perform there frequently. The Edo actor One Kikugoro III, who arrived in Osaka in 1825 and remained for 6 months, caused a particular stir. Gikado Ashikyuki flourished 1814-33. The illustration 10 Actors on Tenjin Bridge is dated to 1825. It is a woodblock print and at present in the British Museum, London. This tree-pitch combines panoramic view of one of Osaka's scenic spots, the Tenjin Bridge, spanning the Yodo River, with 9 of city's most celebrated actors of male and female roles. It was issued to commemorate the Osaka performances of the Edo actor One Kikugoro III, the 10th figure in the group. Although he was especially celebrated for playing ghosts and lower class characters. He was featured in many prints issued that year as well as in the later ones, celebrating his return to the Osaka stage after his formal retirement in Edo. Gocho Tei Sadamasu Kunimasu flourished in 1834 to 1852. Okawa Hashizo as the priest Saigo, 1848. Chubun, it's a woodblock print and at present in the Victoria and Albert Museum, London. The popular One Kikugoro III performed this role at Osaka Nakaza Theatre in August 1848. After his formal retirement in 1847, Kikugoro reappeared under the stage name Okawa Hashizo. However, the lotus blossoms in the title box, Buddhist symbols of the afterlife, indicate that the print was issued posthumously. In the 19th century, several celebrated actors exiled from Edo due to their extravagant lifestyles settled in Osaka. To the delight of local publishers and theatre audiences, the influx of specialists in Aragoto's roles altered patterns of taste in Osaka. While the domestic dramas traditional to the Kamigata region were not totally eclipsed, their monopoly was challenged by Fizido historical and often fantastic dramas featuring heroic warriors. Because the market was considerably smaller in Osaka than in Edo, and because Edo prints were also readily available, even the most successful artists did not make a living solely by designing prints, but held other professions in related fields such as book selling and book illustration. Between the late 18th century and the mid 19th century, around 200 artists were active in the production of single sheet prints. Most of these were issued by only 4 publishers who produced both commercial series and deluxe editions. Surir Monu, using overprinting, costly metallic pigments, lacquer and mica. Favorite actors in their most popular roles were depicted in the highest quality prints, which were generally intended and eagerly seized on by members of the local kabuki fan clubs. Edo and Kyoto also had a fan clubs comprising of wealthy theatre devotees, usually men who were well versed in the ways of pleasure quarters as well. Clubs developed elaborate clapping techniques to applaud their hero, especially when he made his first appearance of the season. They wore special garments in the actor's favorite colors or emblazoned with his crest and assumed financial responsibility for the decoration and repairs to the theatre where their actor performed. This system of private patronage was essential to the flowering of kabuki theatre in Osaka and to the development of its autonomous printmaking tradition. The few single sheet prints that were published in Osaka before 1800 were often made using a stencil technique in which black outlines were printed with woodblocks and colors were filled in with stencils. This stencil technique, which was less expensive and technically exacting than multi-block printing, continued to be employed in Osaka well after the appearance of a full color prints in Edo. The heyday of Osaka prints came only in the Bunka Bunsai eras 1804 to 1829, a period that saw the rise of two prolific and influential artistic lineages, one of them linked to Shun Kosai Hokushu dated 1832 and the other to Asayama Ashikuni flourished in 1807 to 1818. Ashikuni and the artist association with him, usually identifiable by the characters Ashi or Kuni in their names, benefited from their close ties to a circle of theatre enthusiasts and Kyoka poets who began commissioning prints from them. Many of these prints were first issued for private circulation and only later to the general public. Yoshikuni flourished in 1803-40. The leader of the Jukodo poetry circle was himself an amateur print designer. Their prints often commemorated specific roles and performances, especially those of Nakamura Otaemon III, who appears in more Osaka prints than any other actor. Little is known about Shun Kosai Hokushu's origin or training. The name Hokushu suggests ties with Hokusai, who visited Osaka in 1812 and 1817 and published works there as early as 1808, but the nature of the relationship is unclear. Some of Hokushu's designs exhibit the Edo's master's clarity of design and dramatic use of atmospheric effects, as do those of his pupils, most notably Shun Kosai Hoku-i, dated 1836. Hoku-i was specially fond of airy night scenes in which he used the contrast between light and dark to heighten the dramatic impact of his subject. The illustration Iwai Shikaji as Lady Osuma and Bendo Jutaro as Sa Saya Henbai, 1832. It is a woodblock print and is in the Victoria and Albert Museum, London. The play commemorated in this print revolves around a family conflict caused by a scheming retainer. In the dramatic scene here, Lady Osuma emerges from the cave where she has been hiding and shines a torch on Hanbei, her brother-in-law's murderer. The influence of Utagawa school became pronounced in Osaka after Toyo Kuni's visit to the city in 1821 in the company of a kabuki troupe. Utagawa Sadamasu, also known as Kunimasu, flourished in 1834 to 1852, was among the local artists who followed Toyo Kuni back to Edo for a period of study. The actor prints by Sadamasu and his students feature the long angular faces and broad stooped shoulders, characteristics of this school, while exhibiting the Osaka predilection for rich backgrounds and decorative effects. Gochotei Sadamasu, Kunimasu flourished 1834-54. Okawa Hashizo as the priest Sagyo 1848, Cuban woodblock print, Victoria and Albert Museum, London. In the illustration, the popular One Kikugoro III performed his role at Osaka's Nakaza Theatre in August 1848. After his formal retirement in 1847, Kikugoro reappeared under the stage name Okawa Hashizo. However, the lotus blossoms in the title box, Buddhist symbols of the afterlife, indicate this print was issued posthumously. Print production in Osaka nearly ceased in 1842 owing to the promulgation of the new sumptuary laws of the Tempo era. But 5 years later, Hiro Sada, who flourished in 1820 to 1865, began issuing half-block size Cuban bust portraits of actors in the guise of famous figures from history and legend. Thereafter, he published prolifically, becoming the most successful Osaka artist during the final years of the Edo period. His domination of the Osaka print world can be attributed both to his talent and to his continuing ties with local theatres and publishers.